5C reporting for Darwin 10.60. We're going to be covering a lot of data today and a lot of information. We only have a half-hour time limit, so we're going to try to get through this as quickly as possible, but make sure we get everything shown to you that needs to be. To get started, a couple things. A lot of data is incorporated into the 1094C and the 1095C. And there's a lot of different client scenarios that you can run into with your clients that this is really really made it hard for us to try to incorporate everything. But we did try to cover as much as we can with the functionality. And so hopefully what you're going to see today and get with Darwin 10.60 will meet your needs. A couple things though, the 1094C and the 1095C are the only two forms we currently have in Darwin for the ACA year-end reporting. Also on the 1095C, Part 3 is not something we're currently populating with data. Basically, there are three ways that Darwin will populate the 1095 and the 1094C. The three different types of the three different methods that can be used are, number one, we have created a utility, an ACA History utility that will bring data in. The other way is through the actual pay run that will populate for the 1095C. And the last method would be any type of manual updates. We have made both the 1095C and the 1094C available for you as a client to edit whenever you deem that you need to edit them. You can do that beforehand. You can edit them before you actually run them at the end of the year. That choice is yours. We'll be going over these combinations and how you can use them, and even the different methods in a little bit more detail. But first, I want to start going through some of the setup that will need to be done in Darwin 10.60 in order to get this set up. If you're familiar with the ACA current reporting in Darwin, a lot of these windows will look familiar to you. If you have not seen them before, they will be new windows. All we're going to cover within these windows are the actual 1094C and the 1095C functionality, that we recently put in. So the first area you're going to have to go to is at the company level. So if you go to Tools, Setup, Company, and then go to the ACA Setup, you will see that we've added a couple buttons onto this window. The parameters that are out here are parameters that you've probably seen before with the ACA reporting for affordability and the look back. One thing to keep in mind is part-time, full-time equivalent hours per month. That number there will determine for the 1094C and 1095C if an employee is either considered part-time for the month or full-time for the month. So if they're under that number, they will be part-time for the month. If they're over, then they will be a full-time employee for that month. So you need to keep that in mind when you come out here to make sure that number is the number that you want, the 130 hours. The new buttons that we set up, the one is the 1094 ALE group setup. And basically what this is for is for the 1094C, which is the employer portion, you can file as an aggregated group. And so we wanted to give you in Darwin the opportunity to group those clients together into one aggregated group for reporting purposes. So at the company setup here, you're basically just setting up that group and then putting the clients that belong to that group in there. So really all you need to do here is just type in a group ID, create the group and a description, save it, and then you can come down here and you can pick from the list of your clients. Oh, that one's already in another group. So let's go down here and select that one. And so we've selected these two clients to be in this group. Now, as you can see, this opened up this box for the 1094 filer. Basically, with the aggregated groups, you can have one client that is your authoritative transmittal that will produce a 1094-C for them. And what you can do here is you can check which client that is going to be. They're all still going to get the 1095-Cs for all of their employees, but the 1094 will be filed under the one that you choose with this checkbox. And then simply you go out and you save it, and that group is saved and ready to go as an aggregated group. You can also come out here and see, which of the groups that you have set up and who are part of those groups, if you so desire. As you can see, when it came up with the box and told me that group was already in an ALE group, that's because I had it selected out here for this group ID. The other box that is on the company setup is the 1095 pay code selection. And basically what that is it's a place to select the pay codes that are going to create or be used for the hours for the month for the employee. And you can set that up at the company level. We also give you the opportunity of, as you'll see in a couple minutes, to do this at the client level if you have client-specific codes that you want to use just for that client. At this level, though, you can select any of the pay codes that are available out here to calculate for the hours for the employee per the month. One thing to note out here is if you add a new pay code to Darwin, that code will show up under the available, and you will have to manually come out here and move that code over to selected if you would like hours to calculate on that pay code for an employee for the ACA reporting. So that's basically it at the company level for the ACA setup. One thing I want to show you before we go any further is to go out and look at the employee piece. And this basically is the heart of the 1095-C form. So I wanted to show you this before we go any further with client setup or anything else. On the client card, you'll basically go to the ACA setup, and you'll see a new button out here called Employee 1095-C Information. If you click on this, this will open up the window that will populate the 1095-C. And you will see there's a line 14, 15, and 16, which, other than the personal information for the employee, is the only thing that really shows up on the 1095-C. Line 14 and 15 will cover with the client setup, and then line 16 we'll talk about when we get into the different methods of bringing data in. But I wanted to be able to show you this just so you would have an idea on what it looks like at the employee level. Also out here, you can certainly go out here and edit this at any time, and you can also edit it at the end of the year before you actually run the 1095-Cs, and we'll talk to about that when we get to the year-end piece. So now we're going to go out and look at the client setup that we need to do for the 1094-C and 1095-C reporting. And again, we're going out to the ACA setup on the go-to button for the client. And as you will see, this brings up our normal ACA reporting for the look back and for affordability. But you will notice down here we have a new checkbox, and then there's also a button. The ALE checkbox must be marked in order for a client to produce a 1094 and a 1095-C. It has to be marked. And this is true even for those clients that are included in an aggregated group. If they are part of that group, they still have to have the ALE checkbox marked. Once that ALE checkbox is marked, it brings up this 1094, 1095 setup. And the 1094, 1095 setup is a client setup that we have that's going to take some information populates a 1094 and some information that populates a 1095. The 1094, basically the certification of eligibility, is the only thing that's out here on the client that we're going to mark that would flow over to the 1094 actual form when that prints. And so you can mark any one of these that may apply to your client and what may be deemed necessary to have it show up on their 1094C. The 1095, on the other hand, we have both line 14 and line 15. Line 14 is a coverage offered code that basically is a code that you're going to select for an employee ultimately. We have it set up on the client card. And on the client card, it will be the default, and this will flow into every month for every employee. If you have any employees that are a one-off that would need a different type of code, then you will have to manually go out and enter that. Some of these codes out here, according to IRS guidelines, require line 15 to be filled out on the form as well. If a code is 1B, 1C, 1D, or 1E for any of your clients, it will require that a dollar amount is entered in line 15 for the lowest cost premium for employee-only coverage. So in order to set those up, you can come down here and go to the line 15 employee share setup. Now, if you have a code 1A up here and you still have information down here, that's fine. It simply will not populate on the 1095C. The only codes that you will have the monthly amount show up is if you have code 1B, C, or D, or E selected for line 14. So to set up your employee share setup, basically there's two methods that you could use here. The age banded, or if you have a category rated amount, that would be one flat amount for everybody for the employee only premium cost. And for the category only, this current client has that set up. And you're simply going to put in your start date and your end date and then the plan amount. And once you do that, that will populate into line 15 for those employees. You can also, as you can see, I have future date set up. If you know your new amount for your new plan year, you can set that up. Here also, it's simply going to pull in what is within that date range. The 1/1/2015, 12/31, 2015, anything in that range is going to pull in that $200 amount. If you have an age-banded plan, you will need to mark that on this original ACA. Just click on the box there, and that will open up your start and end date here to put in your tiers, and then also open up the age band calculation method. The age band calculation method is if you have a birth date and you are going to move up a tier, if it's marked the first of the month, then that will be when that new amount goes into effect. So if my birthday is today and I am going to move up a tier as far as my ages for the tiers, I will, for the month of October, since it's first of the month, I will have the new amount listed there from the new tier that I moved up to. If it is first of next month, so if I have a birthday today and I move to a new tier with a new amount, that will not show until the month of November. If I check renewal date, when it is the renewal date for the tiers, the start date for the new tiers, that would go into effect, and that new amount would go into effect on that date. Also down here, you'll see the 1095 pay code selections. This is where if you need to set up pay codes for specific ones for a client, you can do so. Keep in mind that if you have a new pay code, just like you had to do at the company level, you'll also have to do this at the client level. There is no roll down from the company to the client. So you'll have to come out here and make sure they're over on the selected side, the new code. As you can see from this client, there is nothing selected here. So the system, when it sees nothing on the selected side, will look to the company level and use those pay codes there. The only other piece that is a piece of setup is kind of a mix between company and client, so to speak. It is the fact that we need to track benefits or coverage for these employees per month. So in order to do that, we've set up a checkbox. If you go out to Tool Setup, Payroll, and then go to Benefits, and go to your Benefits Setup, you will see we added a new checkbox here called Aca Benefit. And what this is going to do is basically any employee that has this benefit assigned to them will be tracked as having coverage for that month. So in the payroll process, in the utility, if there is transactions with a date in the month and it has this benefit attached to that employee, it will track it as they had coverage for the month. We use the benefit side simply because when you get into leaves, and you may have some clients that are 100% coverage, it was easier to have it put on the benefit side, so there is nothing really to do on the deduction side. Now, you certainly can go out and mark this on your plan benefit for that particular client and have that show up. You will need to go out and mark it at the setup level. There is no spot on the company level. It is at the benefit setup level. We found when testing that using an ACA separate benefit may be a benefit to some clients and to you. It won't charge anything to the client for using it. It's a separate benefit, so you could easily attach it. And it's kind of explanatory with the actual code that a client could see that, oh, this one is covered because they have the ACA benefit. But that's your choice on what benefit you want to actually set this up on. Just keep in mind it does need to be assigned to the employee. So we talked a little bit about setup, and basically that's all you need to do for any of the types of setup that need to be done. What we're going to talk about now are kind of those three methods and the thought process behind those, and actually go through the utility to show you that. On the employees, we've been out and we've looked at the employee card, the ACA window, and we've talked about the line 14 and the line 15 as being part of the setup. Line 16 is really the list of codes that you're going to use that kind of track the type of employee, and it also may track the type of coverage that you're offering. The employer shared as far as methods. If you're using what type of safe harbor, you can use a code for that. Basically, the first four codes, though, A, B, 2A, 2B, 2C, and 2D, are the four codes that we've automated with our process. And those codes are for different statuses with the employee. When you get to 2E on, I think it's down to 2I, those are going to be your codes with the different methods, the multi-employer, the three different safe harbors. And so we really had no way of knowing your client specifics for those. So if you are using any type of those codes for line 16, that is something that you're going to have to manually edit for on the employee's cards to give them those codes. Code 2A, 2B, 2C, and 2D will automatically populate to the employee's cards through either the utility or the payroll. 2A basically is the code that's saying the employee is not employed. So if you have For example, let me bring up this other employee. Because I know he has some different codes out here. Okay, so this employee, I ran the utility on, and I also ran a pay run on. So just to give you an idea, I ran a payroll for pay run. Excuse me. I ran the utility on him for January through October, and then I paid him in November. So as you can see, he's got 2A listed for January through June. That is because he did not start until August 1st. So for any new hires, they will have 2A if they're not employed. Now, there is the code 2D, which also can be used for a non-assessment period. And those are if an employee is in a look-back period. Because we don't know all of those look-back periods for your employees, we couldn't automate that piece of it. So if you have employees that are new hires that are in a look-back period and you need to use code 2D, you will have to manually update those. But if they're not and they're a new employee, they will come through as a 2A because they're not employed. The other piece of this is if you have a terminated employee. If an employee terminates, the 2A will not appear in the month that they terminate, and this is according to the IRS guidelines. You cannot use 2A in the month in which an employee terminates, so it will be 2A in the following month. So if I terminate today, I will have 2A in November. 2B is the code that's used for part-time. So if any employees are under the part-time parameters that you had set up, those 130 hours at the company level, they will be counted as part-time. Now, if an employee has coverage, so if you have an employee that is part-time, but they have a benefit assigned to them that is an ACA benefit, then they will come through as 2C. 2C is the code for covered employees. So even though they're part-time, if they are covered by a benefit, then they will be listed as 2C. And the guidelines do state that 2C takes precedence over any of the other codes that can be used. So if an employee does have coverage or is covered and they are part-time, they won't be 2B, they will be 2C. 2D then is the last code that's out there that we automatically populate for you. We do not automatically populate if it's a non-assessment period due to a look-back, but waiting periods for benefits can be considered a non-assessment period. So what we've done for the waiting period, and as you can see, this employee from August to October is considered 2D. If we go out and look at his benefit, we will see that he is marked and had the benefit the day he started. So you have to assign that benefit the day the employee starts, if they are covered or if they are in a waiting period. Now, because this employee was in a waiting period, we put in the effective eligible date of 11/1. This employee had a 90-day wait period. So for that 90-day wait period, the system is seeing that he did have the benefit assigned to him in August, but it does not have the effective date until 11/1. So it will code them in 2D until November 1st. So when I ran this employee for a payroll in November, he was out of his waiting period and he was actually covered. So he got the 2C code for the month of November. So the payroll process and the utility will use these codes and populate into the employee's respective ACA windows. On the pay run, if an employee or a client is marked, if a client is marked as ALE, they will automatically, in the pay run, populate those fields in the 1095C window for employees. So if you have a client marked as ALE, it will automatically populate from the pay run. Now, in order to get past history for clients, we've given you a tool that you can use under Tools, Utilities, Payroll. It is the ACA History Update. And basically what this tool will do is you can set a date range, and it will go back and it will look at transactions, and it will treat them just as if they were a pay run and go through them and calculate the codes for the employee and populate that 1095C window. When we first created this, we thought it would be used in January through whenever you're upgraded to 1060 and you're ready to populate those fields, then you would use a utility. But as we got into the development more and the testing of it, it really is a tool that you could probably use on a regular basis. I could see where clients, you may want to use this, say, run it for a quarter, and then at the end of the quarter, look at your employee windows, your ACA setups for them, make sure everything's fine, and then wait till the end of the next quarter and run it for 4/1 through 6/30, and then look at that. So I could see clients doing that. You may want to run it for the whole year or run it through January through November and populate, and then in December run your payrolls to get the last couple payrolls on there for year end. Or you don't have to use this. You're going to have to use this in order for this year to catch everything. But once you get to January, if you just want to go with pay runs, you won't have to use the utility at all. And it's really very simple. The utility will use any date range that you want. So you can use a year, a quarter, a month, whatever you want to use. It simply will not cross over a calendar year. So you cannot do November of 2015 to April of 2016. The date range that you run it for has to be within the same year. If you have data already out there, say from pay runs, or if you manually put data out there, if you mark the overwrite existing records, this tool, and run this tool for that same date range that those edits are in, it will overwrite those edits. So you want to make sure if you're using this tool that you either don't have that checked or that you really do want to overwrite what's currently out there for that date range. So I'm just going to run this. And basically it tells you when it's done. And then you can go out to your employees. And what am I looking for? Oh, I thought I had, yep. I had this one inactive, so I wanted to look at this employee, and we can see he was terminated in 9/5, on 9/5, so he was terminated in September. So if we go out and look at his employee information, we will see that indeed October is the first day that he gets that 2A code because it's a month following his termination. So that's the utility and kind of how that works. And I could see where you may do a combination of all three. You may edit some, you may use utility, you may use the pay runs. Just keep in mind that that ALE checkbox, if it's marked, you're going to get an update to that employee window for every employee for whatever codes. You can then go out and update them if you so desire or edit those. The only thing to make sure of is if you do run a utility, the utility after that you don't overwrite those records. Since my year-end wage file takes a while to run with this test database, what I basically am going to do, or show you a couple of the forms that I ran earlier today. One thing about the year-end wage file, the 1094C and the 1095C are very, very similar to the W-2 process in Darwin. You will go to the run your year-end wage file. You will go to the edit W-2s window, and there will be a new button called 1095. You can click on that button, and then you can edit any employee's 1095 window that you would like to. Keep in mind, if you make an edit at that point, it will not go back and edit the 1095 window on their employee card. One thing to note that I forgot to show earlier is on the employee card for the 1095C, if you go out here, you will notice that it does have a drop down. So history will be stored. But again, keep in mind, if you make an edit at the W-2 process level, it will not come back and update here. And then the print W-2s window at the year end, very similar to the W-2s. There's just two buttons on there, a 1094C and a 1095C. So you can print those forms. So it's very, very similar to the W-2 process. Once you print those, you will have print out your 1095Cs and your 1094. A couple things I wanted to show you with the 1095C. This employee here had the same code for every month. So with that, all 12 months is entered for the 1095. Also, one thing to note on here, the plan start month, enter a 2-digit number that's currently not being populated. We do not, it's optional for 2015. You do not need to populate it. We are looking at for a possible update before year end with some other things as far as the forms that we may be able to get that populated, but it is not required for 2015. So really, if an employee does not have anything, their codes are the same, they're not going to have a lot populate on this form. Now, if an employee does have changes, you will see that they do populate per month, and those different amounts will populate each month. Now, if an employee has 1 month that is different, it will still populate each and every month if all of them are the same except for that month. The only time you're going to see them in all 12 months is if indeed all 12 months have the same code. And the 1094. The 1094 is going to populate client information. It will also populate your number of forms. If you're an aggregated group member, it will populate here, and up here if it's a filer. Here is where your certification of eligibility will populate. So if you mark that on the client card, this is where you would see that. In Part 3, you will have minimum essential coverage offer indicator, your count, your aggregated group indicator, and your transition relief. The minimum essential coverage offer indicator is going to look at full-time employees and those that have that benefit, ACA benefit check marked on a benefit that is assigned to them. And the MEC offer indicator basically states if 95% of your full-time are covered, you get a yes in the box. So that will populate by looking at your full-time and then looking at the benefit to see if there is a benefit, ACA benefit assigned to that employee. The full-time employee count and the total employee count, when the IRS guidelines first came out, they said you could use either the first of the month or the last of the month. It didn't matter as long as you were consistent throughout. They have since come out and said that the 12th of the month would work since there are other tax reporting functions that take account on the 12th of the month. So we have used the 12th of the month as a day for the full-time employee count and the total employee count. The aggregated group indicator will be just that. If they're part of an aggregated group, they will have a check mark. And your transition relief indicator is going to come from what you have marked up here. If you have either B or C marked up here, you will have either an A or B populate in this field for employees as far as what the transition relief indicator is. And then your last part 4, the last page, is the aggregated group, and it will list the members of the aggregated group and their EIN numbers. Couple things to note with the forms. Along with that health code possibly getting added, we are going to make updates because we do need to get the name of the person to contact to populate here. So that's one thing we're going to be doing before year end. The other thing is currently the 1095-C only prints the first page. It does not print the continuation page or the instructions. And we will update that before year end. So we get that out there for you. There is a lot of setup out here and a lot to take in. So if anyone has any questions at all on any of this 1094-C or 1095-C, please submit your email to productmanagement@thinkwareinc.com, and I get those emails, so I will make sure to get those answered and get that back to you so you have a response to that. A lot there for the 1094-C and 1095-C, so please, by any means, if you have any questions at all, make sure to check with us and we will get answers for you on that. I appreciate your time today. I know how busy everyone is, and I appreciate taking the time to go through this webinar, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you very much.